Welcome to Healthy Living. I'm Lori Johnson. Today we're going to show you which foods can help us beat our scariest diseases. And you're probably going to be surprised. So what goes through your mind when you consider what to eat? Well, we asked some folks. See how their answers compare to yours.
How do you decide what to eat?
By whatever I have in my cabinet at the time.
Just whatever tastes good to me, really.
Wherever has the coolest atmosphere.
If I'm in a rush, fast food, Chick-fil-A. And unless it's Sunday. Sundays, Chick-fil-A is closed. So.
I eat whatever my wife makes for me.
Do you snack?
Definitely, sometimes. Well, most of the time I snack.
Can you relate to those answers? Well, in his new book, Eat to Beat Disease, Dr. William Li says making the right food choices is literally a life or death decision. Dr. Li, welcome.
Thank you, Lori. It's a pleasure being here.
So tell us, why do you say our fork is one of our greatest health tools?
Well, as a medical doctor, I can tell you that medicines are very powerful to treat diseases, but foods are even more powerful because they can prevent diseases to begin with.
So you have in this book, which is fantastic, about 200 different foods and their different medicinal properties, but you've isolated these 5 right here. What's so special about these?
Well, before we talk about the foods, I just want to point out the fact that in my book, I talk about the way that foods and health actually work together. It's not just about the food, it's about how our body responds to what we put in it. And we have these health defense systems that actually govern whether we stay healthy or we get sick. And foods can activate it. And so I've put 200 foods that allow us to choose which foods activate our health. And that's what we have in front of us.
Fantastic. So you love tomatoes, but not just any tomatoes, right?
Well, foods are not all created equal. And I love tomatoes because they're not only a source of vitamins, but they also contain this natural chemical called lycopene, which actually cuts off the blood supply that can feed cancer and right-size our circulation. And in my book, I write about a study of almost 40,000 men who are eating 2 to 3 servings of cooked tomatoes, and they have a reduced risk of developing prostate cancer. I like San Marzano tomatoes, as an example, because they contain more of that lycopene. Other tomato types that actually are good are cherry tomatoes because they're tiny and potent. And then there's something called the tangerine tomato that's actually almost orangish colored. And so not all tomatoes were made the same. Pick the ones that actually are the most potent.
So when you talk about cooked tomatoes, I mean, it's something as simple as tomato sauce.
That's right. Something that, has been used for hundreds of years that we all enjoy. This is health that we can actually lean into, that we love to put into our lives. And that's what I focus my book on, is what can we add to our lives based on science, not just what to cut out.
Do you need to eat them every day for the benefits?
Well, it depends on the different foods. The key is diversity. We want to actually be able to eat as widely as possible, and we want to eat because we enjoy what we're doing. It's so hard to deny ourselves things. That's why diets that are one size fits all and that ask you to cut things out of your life actually are so difficult to maintain.
And we know that when someone says don't eat something, you want to eat it even more. So talk about the bread. And that's another thing. We thought bread was on the don't eat list.
Right. Well, this is where science is helping us refocus our attention. And it's not just every bread. I actually have, in my book, talk about pumpernickel bread and sourdough bread. Let's talk about pumpernickel. It's actually made with rye flour. And rye flour is a type of grain. We know whole grains are good for you. That actually lowers the level of a unhealthy bacteria that can be in our gut that produces a toxin that causes inflammation. So eating pumpernickel bread can lower that bacteria, lower inflammation. Sourdough bread, which, I love sourdough bread.
Me too, and it smells great, by the way.
It's got that nice tangy taste to it, is actually made with a bacteria which makes that sour flavor, that tangy flavor. And that bacteria is the same bacteria that's in our gut, a healthy gut bacteria that boosts our immune system, that helps us heal faster, and even helps our brain release the social hormone called oxytocin, which is what we get when we actually get a hug from somebody we love.
And fruit is another thing. You say that kiwi are excellent for our health, and we've been told to watch out for the fructose, to watch out for the sugar in fruit, but you say not so much.
Food is complicated, and it's too difficult to just reduce it to a single bad guy part of it. And so, we all have to watch out for the amount of sugar that we eat, and some people actually need to be especially careful because they may have diabetes, for example. But fruits in general come with not only natural fruit sugars, but a lot of other things, which include fiber and what we call bioactives. These are natural chemicals that when we eat them, they actually act in our cells in beneficial ways. For kiwi, it actually activates one of our health defense systems, that's our DNA protection. So our DNA can be damaged by the environment. You get sunshine, ultraviolet radiation, you get secondhand smoke that you breathe in, or even when you're at the filling station, if you can smell the fumes of the gas, those are toxins that can damage DNA.
Wow, so when we're pumping our gas, if we smell the gasoline fumes, we should maybe move?
I always stand upwind.
Oh.
But the trick is that we can't avoid these types of environmental harms, but research has shown that one kiwi a day, will reduce the damage to DNA by about 60%. And if you have 3 kiwis a day, this was done in a clinical study, actually it will help the DNA repair itself by about 60%.
Wow, 3 kiwis a day, 1 to 3 a day. And that's a huge improvement. And they're so delicious,
too.
They
are really delicious.
And here you also have another one of my favorite fruits, mangoes.
Right. Well, I love mangoes. They're some of the juiciest, tastiest fruits that are out there. I love them for breakfast, actually, just a couple of slices. So mangoes belong to what I call a grand slamming food. 5 health defense systems. Angiogenesis, our blood vessels, the stem cells, our regenerative system, microbiome, our healthy gut bacteria, our DNA repair system, and our immunity. These 5 systems, mangoes light all 5 of them up. And so what's really amazing is that there's actually natural chemicals in mangoes that actually can help build our microbiome and boost our immunity as well.
Well, it's so interesting that you talk about the 5 different areas that our body defends itself. And talk a little bit more about the angiogenesis. A lot of people don't realize this, but it has to do with blood vessels.
Right. Angiogenesis is how our body grows blood vessels. We have so many blood vessels in our body, 60,000 miles worth, that if you were to pull them all up and line them end to end, it would circle the earth twice. These bring oxygen and nutrients to every cell in our body, and they protect us. And what happens is that if we don't have enough blood vessels, our tissues are starved and they die. If you have too many, the blood vessels can feed diseases like cancer. And so foods that actually can prevent those extra blood vessels, like mowing the lawn, preventing extra blood vessels from feeding diseases like cancer, can really be helpful.
And another one of our great defenses that you talk about in your book, Eat to Beat Disease, is our microbiome, the good and the bad bacteria in our gut. And you say we should eat to please these little critters in our gut.
That's right. Our microbiome represents 39 trillion bacteria that live inside us. They're our friends. They are, in fact, who we actually are. And we know they talk to our immune system and they help us function in a good way as long as the neighborhood of our bacteria is mostly good guys. And so we can actually feed them fiber that they like to eat. So when we feed ourselves, we're also feeding our bacteria. They love fiber. And in fact, they chew up the fiber and they create the fragments of the fiber, lower inflammation in our body, and do other good things as well. Or we can actually eat the bacteria, and fermented foods like sauerkraut, horseradish, or even kimchi are just some examples, or yogurt actually are ways that we can actually get good, healthy gut bacteria to fill us up.
And we saved the best for last, my favorite, dark chocolate. It's so great that this is so healthy for us.
Well, most people would say we don't need another reason to love chocolate. But researchers have actually shown that chocolate contains natural chemicals called polyphenols that are present in the cacao bean that can actually activate our stem cells and help us regenerate from the inside out. And in my book, Eat to Beat Disease, I write about a study in which older people with heart disease actually are given 2 cups of dark chocolate, made with dark chocolate, twice a day, and over the course of the month, it doubled the number of their regenerative stem cells in their bloodstream.
Wow, that's fascinating. So when you talk about how much dark chocolate, I guarantee you I could eat this whole bar every day. Is that too much?
Well, we have to remember that really chocolate itself is a confection, so it contains sugar and other things. It's really the cacao. In fact, you can have cacao nibs in order to be able to get it. In general, when it comes to sweet, it's moderation, and less is probably more.
Well, this is all fascinating. A lot of folks are like, I don't know how to make these foods, and I'm always rushed for time, and these things take so much time. So we're going to address that next. Coming up, we're headed to the kitchen, where Dr. Lee is going to show us how to make a super healthy dish in record time. So stay tuned. Anyone who's ever sat in a drive-through line knows fast food isn't always that fast. In fact, Dr. Lee, in contrast, lots of healthy foods can be prepared very quickly.
I think healthy and fast is the secret ingredient to actually cooking at home. So the things that I really love are to roast vegetables, which anybody can do. And you can use almost any vegetable. For example, carrots contain carotene that actually helps our immune system and protects our DNA. Red peppers and beets contain natural chemicals that can actually not only protect our DNA, but they can also feed our microbiome and kill cancer stem cells, for example. And broccoli, which actually we know broccoli is good for you, and we normally eat the tops, but I have a secret to tell you.
And it has to do with the stems. You say don't throw away the stems. This is great because that's so wasteful.
Well, that's right. So basically, this is how broccoli comes when we buy it in the market, usually when it's fresh. And we've done research to show that the cancer-fighting, blood vessel-starving properties of the broccoli are in the tops for sure. But when we studied the stem, which is often thrown away, there was twice as much.
Wow.
So the easiest thing to do when you're actually preparing this is just literally just cut off the tops.
All right.
And now you have the tree tops. And then you just slice up the stems into medallions. Cut them on the side. And these, when you cut them this way, they roast and cook really easily. Okay? And it's really super flavorful.
And so you have a vegetable here that I think a lot of people have never seen before. They're purple potatoes.
Purple potatoes are purple. And what makes them purple is a natural dye called anthocyanins that have been shown by researchers to kill colon cancer stem cells. So this purple potato used to be the kind of the king potato for the Incas.
Interesting. So purple potatoes are probably better than all other types of potatoes. We know that sweet potatoes are very healthy, but you prefer these even.
Well, and there's even purple sweet potatoes. So it's really the natural dye that gives us this healthful property.
So looking for that deep, dark color.
Exactly.
Purple potatoes, fantastic. And so we've chopped up all these wonderful vegetables, and what do we do then?
So why don't we go make something?
All right.
Just grab some of those chopped
Grab a hold of it.
Put them right in the baking tray.
All right. Can I just pour some of it?
There you go. All right. That's
they're
perfect.
beautiful.
All right. And you spread them out like this. And then what I do, and this is fast, drizzle a little bit of olive oil. And I like to use olive oil from Greece or from Spain. And the Greek olive oil actually is a specific olive called the Koroneiki olive, which has the highest level of these polyphenols, highest level of health. And the Spanish olive is called Picual. So when you go to the shop and you buy your olive oil, just pick up the bottle, look at the back, and see what type of olive it was made from.
And so you're saying the Greek and the Spanish olives are the best.
The Koroneiki for Greece, Picual for Spain.
Wonderful. So you you drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil.
Right. And what I do is I just put a little bit of salt, not too much because salt is actually bad for your blood pressure and your blood vessels. And then a little bit of fresh cracked pepper, super easy. And preheat the oven to 425. Slide this in for 30 to 45 minutes. Go do something else.
Okay.
Okay. And come back and you've got a healthy meal done.
So let's see what the finished product looks like.
And here it is.
Gorgeous.
Smells great, tastes great. And by the way, you can eat this for a couple of days.
And when we talk about really healthy foods, most people think about salads. And you mentioned the olive oil. How does a person make a real quick salad dressing with olive oil?
Very simple. You basically take a little bit of olive oil, about 3 parts olive oil, and you can actually take a part of vinegar, is usually the component to a dressing, an apple cider vinegar. Apple cider contains gallic acid, which actually starves cancers by cutting off their blood supply. And then you can actually mix them together and just really whip it together with a whisk or a spoon or even a fork. A little bit of salt. You can put some Mediterranean herbs in there, Italian seasoning. And just keep it real simple. Put it over a dressing.
So 3 parts olive oil, 1 part apple cider vinegar, salt, pepper, maybe a little bit of garlic, some herbs.
Some herbs, and you're done.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. This is fantastic. So no more excuses. Well, coming up, how to get the most out of our two favorite drinks, coffee and tea. Stay with us. We're back now with Dr. William Li, and his book is called Eat to Beat Disease. And you might have heard coffee is good, you might have heard it's bad. Dr. Li, where do you come down on coffee?
The science tells us that coffee is actually good, but it's not the cream you put into it or the sugar you put into it. It's actually what Mother Nature put into the coffee bean itself. There are natural chemicals that are like caffeic acid and chlorogenic acid that when we drink coffee, whether it's decaf or caffeinated, actually they act on our cells and actually can help protect our blood vessels, and they can activate our health defense systems.
Wow, so we have here the whole beans and the ground coffee. Does that matter?
Well, when you get whole roasted beans, the key thing is how you store them. Coffee will actually degrade over time in warm temperatures, and so you want to keep it dark and stored. And ground coffee is already kind of starting that degradation process, so you have to use it up faster. You can slow down and keep it longer if you put it in the refrigerator.
Very interesting. So let's talk about tea. You say tea is wonderful for our health, and we have 3 different types of green tea here. Should we shoot for green tea?
Right. So the research shows that tea is good for you, not just green tea, but also black tea, and even chamomile tea has some health benefits as well. But green tea is best studied. We know that green tea, which comes from the tea bush, contains polyphenols, and one of them is called EGCG. And it doesn't really matter for people to memorize that, but the fact of the matter is that when you put hot water on those tea leaves, that natural chemical comes out into the brew, and that's what we're actually sipping. Lowers the risk of actually cancer by cutting off the blood supply, lowers blood pressure, helps your body process fat, cholesterol, and activates your immune system as well. So lots of reasons, and it also feeds your gut bacteria.
Wonderful. So maybe 1 cup of coffee a day and 1 cup of tea a day?
Everybody's got a different taste, and it depends. You can mix it up. I sometimes will mix it up.
I usually have 1 of each. Well, you have 3 different types of tea here. This is the most familiar to most people, the tea bag.
Right. Well, what I wanted to show you is that, in fact, tea comes in a lot of different ways, but there's ways to actually approach the tea. Most of us actually are familiar with the tea bag, and so this is all green tea. You put the tea bag in the cup, and you pour some hot water on it. Be careful you don't burn yourself. And the key thing is that the good stuff, the EGCG, is going to come out of the cup. Now, here's the trick to get the benefit out of it. You want to dunk the tea bag, and you can kind of already see this is starting to turn green.
Oh, well, see, now when I make it, I usually just let the tea bag sit there and come back in 5 minutes.
Well, sitting there is okay, but this will actually push out all those nice, healthy polyphenols from the actual tea bag.
All right, so you have to work a little bit.
A little work is good.
Okay.
You can talk to a friend while you're brewing your tea. Now, some people don't realize that there's another way to have tea besides having a tea bag, and that's loose leaf tea. That's just tea leaves that are kind of cut up, ground up, and you can just have it in a cup, and you don't even need a tea ball. So this is kind of the speedy way. You grab a little handful of tea, and you just pour hot water in it, and check this out. The leaves are stirring around. They will start to settle. You see how they're going down to the bottom? As they're settling, they're releasing the EGCG into the brew. If you set this down, go do something else, come back, all the leaves will be in the bottom, and you can sip from the top. And just don't sip all the way down to the bottom. Another quick, super convenient way to make tea.
Love it. Loose leaf tea. Fantastic. And then this last one is what you call matcha tea. Most people have never heard of matcha tea.
Right. Well, so matcha tea is actually a ceremonial tea used in Japan. It's actually the entire leaf of the tea ground up into a powder, kind of like baking flour, that fine. And what you do is you actually pour the hot water and look at the color this turns. It is
beautiful.
So beautiful green.
Lovely.
And when you sip this, and we can stir it up a little bit, when you sip matcha tea, you are actually drinking the entire tea leaf. So it's much more potent. And what's amazing is that researchers have discovered that the power of matcha tea is such that it can actually kill breast cancer stem cells. These are the little cancer cells that allow the breast cancer to come back, and that's been the holy grail of cancer research.
Fascinating. So matcha tea is clearly the healthiest of all these very healthy green teas.
Certainly one of the most powerful.
Oh, wow. I'm going to go out and get some matcha tea as soon as I can. Well, coming up, Dr. Lee is going to answer your questions, so stay with us. We're back with Dr. William Li, author of Eat to Beat Disease, and we have some viewer questions for you. May Louise asks, how does one eat healthy on a fixed food budget?
Well, the best way to actually keep things healthy and efficient is actually not to spend a lot of money looking for fancy foods, but go for the local foods that are grown right around you, because you're not paying for the transportation it took to actually bring it from wherever back to your kitchen, frankly. And the other thing you can actually do is to get lots of fruits and vegetables and cook for a number of days. So if you cook a lot at once, you can actually eat that, for example, roasting for vegetables, you can eat that over a period of a week.
Wonderful. Well, Karen Shields asks, what, if anything, can we be doing or eating to strengthen our bodies against Candida auris, the fungal infection?
Right. Well, fungus are all around us, and so really the way that we normally don't get affected by fungi, is really that our immune systems are intact. So what can we do to strengthen our immune system? Well, a simple thing to do is actually to be able to keep our gut bacteria really happy. Yogurt's a great way to do that because you're actually feeding bacteria into your body. Plant-based foods, fruits and vegetables, actually give the fiber to your bacteria, and they like to have it. And also, just being really careful not to have too many processed foods or added sugar foods that can harm the gut bacteria in your body.
Fantastic. And Barb says, I have rheumatoid arthritis and am taking medications. I really worry about the side effects and would like to stop taking them. What would you suggest?
Well, I always say that every patient is going to be different, and you have to really talk to your doctor to figure out what's the exact right treatment for you. But one of the things that doctors have a hard time talking about is nutrition. And so one of the things that I write about in my book, Eat to Beat Disease, is that research shows that vitamin C, which is found in oranges and found in a lot of other foods, tomatoes, for example, actually has been studied in autoimmune diseases. Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease, and you can actually lower the rate of flares from your autoimmunity using foods that have high vitamin C.
Great information. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Lee.
It's a pleasure.
And the book, once again, is called Eat to Beat Disease. It's on sale wherever books are sold. Thank you for joining us as well for this edition of Healthy Living. God bless you, and we hope to see you again next time.